My name is Zach Arnold. I'm a Hollywood film and television editor, a documentary director, father of two, an American Ninja Warrior in training, and the creator of Optimize Yourself. For over 10 years now, I have obsessively searched for every possible way to optimize my own creative and athletic performance, and now I'm here to shorten your learning curve. Whether you're a creative professional who edits, writes, or directs, you're an entrepreneur, or even if you're a weekend warrior, I strongly believe that you can be successful without sacrificing your health or your sanity in the process. You ready? Let's design the optimized version of you. Hello and welcome to the Optimize Yourself podcast. If you're a brand new optimizer, I welcome you and I sincerely hope that you enjoy today's conversation. If you were inspired to take action after listening today, why not tell a friend about this show and help spread the love? And if you're a longtime listener and Optimizer OG, welcome back. Whether you're brand new or you're a seasoned vet, if you have just 10 seconds today, it would mean the world to me if you clicked the subscribe button in your podcast app of choice. Because the more people that subscribe, the more that iTunes and the other platforms can recognize this show, and thus the more people that you and I can inspire to step outside their comfort zones to reach their greatest potential. And now on to today's show. If there is one sure thing about Hollywood, it is that no single path to success exists. Unlike doctors, lawyers, or accountants, Hollywood doesn't provide you a roadmap of simple steps that if you follow them, if you do the work, and if you produce results, you will automatically become successful. There are so many different paths to be taken and many more to be forged. And although the roads are going to vary for everyone, the more that I break down people's success stories, I've discovered that there are unwavering constants: consistency, perseverance, and most importantly, a willingness to help others. Today's guest, Agustin Rexach, also known as Auggie, has worked on such shows as From Dusk Till Dawn, Hawaii Five-0, the 2016 remake of Roots, and 2 seasons of Genius for National Geographic, just to name a few. And the unique path that he has forged throughout his varied career is the absolute embodiment of these qualities. Coming to Hollywood from the island of Puerto Rico, Auggie had every reason to believe that he would never make it in the film industry. And in this episode, he and I go deep into what it means to live by all of those qualities that I mentioned and how putting others first is often the fastest path to your own success. In addition to talking about how he got where he is today as a highly successful assistant editor, Auggie also candidly shares his struggles with weight loss and burnout and the steps that he has taken to overcome both. And just because this episode was so good, I'm going to give you a quick spoiler. In addition to Auggie's consistency, his perseverance, and his willingness to help others, there was one additional key mindset that led him to where he is today. And that is the following quote: "I have the job already, they just don't know it yet." If you find yourself questioning whether or not you will ever be successful in the entertainment industry, Auggie's unique path to where he is today is a masterclass in learning how you can shift your mindset and approach your career from a completely different perspective. If today's interview inspires you to step up your networking game so you can continue to build relationships with people that you admire who can open the right doors to the next stage in your career, I am excited to share with you my new, improved, and vastly expanded Insider's Guide to Writing Amazing Outreach Emails. In this extensive guide, I will help you completely transform your outreach email game so you can build a networking strategy and reach out to the right people so you can seek much needed advice, connect with a potential mentor, set up meetings and shadowing opportunities, and even get referred for your next gig. In this upgraded version, I have also included a step-by-step template that breaks down every single piece of your outreach email from subject line all the way to the final salutation. And I also provide a video tutorial with a before and after email teardown, so you understand what a great outreach email should and should not include. To download your free guide and take your outreach emails to a completely new level, visit optimizeyourself.me/email guide. All right, without further ado, my conversation with assistant editor Agustin Auggie Rexach, made possible today by our amazing sponsors Evercast and ErgoDriven, who are going to be featured just a bit later in today's interview. To access the show notes for this and all previous episodes, as well as to subscribe so you don't miss the next inspirational interview, please visit optimizeyourself.me/podcast. I'm here today with Agustin Rexach, also known as Auggie. And you, sir, are an assistant editor and an editor that's been working in scripted television Hollywood for the last several years. Some of your recent credits include The Purge, The Gifted, Genius, Hand of God, Roots, Hawaii Five-0. Dude, you've worked on some good stuff, and your story is so much bigger and so much deeper than some of these credits. I'm really excited that we can finally get this conversation on the record today.
Thank you so much, Zach. I mean, I'm super excited to be here, very honored. You've kind of set the benchmark for, giving editors and post-production people a voice, and I followed your trajectory for, I guess, a good 6 years. So to be here is pretty powerful for me. Thank you.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about what's happened in those last 6 years, how we met, what the trajectory was about work-life balance and figuring out how can I be healthy in this industry. But before we go there, I want people to get to know you a little bit better, because you're not the likeliest candidate to be working on shows at the level that you are in Hollywood. So where in the world did all of this begin?
I was born in Puerto Rico, tiny island in the Caribbean Sea, 100 miles long, 35 miles wide. And I'm sure you hear this from everybody that's in this industry. I never thought that I'd end up working in the industry, much less in Hollywood. But from a very young age, my mother really fostered a love of cinema with me. And, when it came time to go to college, I was fortunate enough to be able to attend Boston University's School of Communications. And I went about it pretty much like kind of Super Mario, walking around, and then the big mushroom pops up. And it was that day that the big mushroom popped up, and it's time to pick your major. I'm like, oh, crap. And so I looked at this thing and I saw it. I saw film production. And right away, I was like, oh, no, no, I can't do that. Like kids that come from where I come from, they don't do that, And then that was the little devil on the left shoulder. And then the angel on the right shoulder said, pick it. If you're afraid of it, go for it, And I'm like, okay, I'll do this. And I did. I spent the next 4 years, learning, all the facets of filmmaking in the analog world. Like I learned how to edit on a Steenbeck. There were no Avids at that time. And then when I was in college, I never thought about editing as a career. Like you get caught up in the rigmarole of film school, and everybody wants to be a director or a producer. And that's what I thought I would try. But then my teaching assistant towards the end of my tenure at BU said, when you get out there, give editing a try, because everything that I saw in your work, your short films and everything, the editing was always really interesting. And, those are those things that, a single sentence can change your life. And it did, So when I got out there, I went back to Puerto Rico because I fell in love, and I was like, I'm going back. And so I heard his voice and I started working in commercials, because that was the only real filmmaking that was happening in the island that was sustainable from an income standpoint and all that stuff. So, I arrived at this wonderful production company called Paradiso Films, met my first employer, Hochi Melero, who was integral to my development. And he said to me, we just got this thing called an Avid. And if you learn how to use it, you can have the night shift. And so that's it. They weren't paying me. I wasn't employed by them. But I just switched on that mindset that said, I have a job already. They just don't know it yet. But I already have the job. So I'm going to start coming in every day, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. I was there waiting for the editor to have a break. And it took me about 6 months to really teach myself. And the biggest obstacle was actually getting time on the machine. Because, the regular daytime editor was so busy. Long story short, got it, did it, started editing. And then from there on, I got invited to work in Miami did that for about 8 years and cut all sorts of things from music videos to documentaries. Commercials was always the backbone of my livelihood. And little by little, I kept moving west because that voice that said, I want to tell stories and I want to be in scripted, whether it's features or television, was always there. And finally, in 2010, we took the plunge, came out here and went for it. And it took a bit to get a foothold in the industry. But I did it, and I'll never forget, this is something that we didn't talk about, but in 2000, I met you in 2010 at Edit Fest.
I knew I recognized you, and I couldn't put put the face and the name and everything together. But I've always felt like I knew you, but I couldn't place it. So I'm glad you finally reminded me of that.
That's what it is. Like, I had just gotten to LA, and I was like living and walking in abject terror because it was like, I have a family, I have a 1-year-old, and I have no job. But I went to Edit Fest, and I met you, and we got to talk a little bit, and you gave me a lot of confidence. Just the fact that you would speak to me, a complete stranger, and meeting you and knowing your credits and all that stuff. At the time, I believe you were doing Burn Notice.
I just started Burn Notice, and I was talking about my first season on that panel. I'd never spoken on a panel, never did any of that. And they said, hey, you want to be at Edit Fest to talk about Burn Notice? I'm like, what planet am I living on? So I'm glad that it had the positive impact on you.
That's and Burn Notice, I never worked on it, but I did have the pleasure of working with James Wilcox on Hand of God, where we got to meet the wonderful Ben Watkins.
Oh, yes. I love Ben.
Yeah. That show, my time on Hand of God was really special. I have to say that group of people, all that whole post crew, was just like an amazing level of human quality. Like, I was there and I felt so at home. I felt so happy to go to work every day on that show. And I think it started with Ben, and it just trickled
always
down.
Comes from the top down. Ben learned very well from Matt Nix himself. Matt Nix was the showrunner, creator of Burn Notice, and then Ben was one of the executive producers, writers, also an actor on the show a few times. I loved working with Ben. He was nothing but a pleasure. And if things aligned differently, schedules and otherwise, it would have been great to work on the show. Didn't end up working out, but I love Ben, and I'm guessing you also got to know Steve Lang.
Yes,
and Steve Lang was the reason I got Burn Notice. So he's a good friend of mine and colleague, and we could reminisce forever. However, I think there's a lot more value we can pull out of the story. We've barely just begun. There's so many layers of the onion that we can peel. But where I want to start, you may not even realize it, but you've already pulled out a very specific theme in your conversation. You've talked about the many different voices that you've either listened to or not listened to. And the scripts that we have in our head are so powerful, and we're going to talk a lot more about those. But you mentioned that there was this voice that told me, I should do this. This professor, you heard his voice, you said, I'm going to follow this. But there was also another voice that I think is really important that we need to talk about, which is the voice that said, oh no, kids from Puerto Rico, we don't go to film school. This isn't for me. We don't become film majors. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people out there listening right now feel the same way. They feel, I'm an outsider. I'm a minority. I'm not sure this is for me. Mm-hmm. How do we get them to not listen to that voice and take the path that you did?
Man, that is such a loaded question. I'm so glad you asked me that, because I am still struggling with that. I feel like I'm in my 4th decade in this world. I won't say where in that 4th decade I fall, because I don't want to date myself too much. But I feel young, man. I feel like I don't get old, but I still struggle with it. I feel now, and especially with what's happened with the pandemic and all that stuff, it's been a huge reset button. And what the pandemic has done for me is that it's really like made me take stock of all the BS in my life, and really has given me the time to do a lot of self-reflection. Like, I'm not afraid of silence. Like, I know a lot of people who couldn't work or what, and they're freaking out. They're like, I don't know. Every day in my life, I've either been working or thinking about how to get work, or but we're not comfortable with our own silence. And that's something that I've always been very comfortable with. So this pandemic has given me a lot of time to reflect. And I've been really taking stock little by little of everything and all the things that I've ever told myself and how valuable they've been and if they've had a net effect. And that inferiority complex, I guess, that you develop as an, a kid from another country, or, because we have a complicated relationship because we are US citizens, but it's a different country. I was brought up in the island. I left the island when I was 20. English was not my first language. And it's a whole different culture. But all that to say, and not to be glib about it, but it's like, listen to that voice that says that you are not worthy of that. Accept it, but let it go through you. I think the big mistake that I've made, and I'm always going to try to speak from the I. I don't feel comfortable with being like a motivational speaker or like a life coach or whatever. I'm just going to tell you my story, and if anybody benefits from it, awesome. And and if I'm full of it, then feel free to tell me that too. That's cool. You have to let it go through you. I think when you ignore a feeling and you tamp it down, it's almost like clogging up the pipes, that energy, that feeling is going to stay in there. And then you'll realize that most of your energy and time is going to be spending tamping down those insecurities. But when you face up to them and you accept them, but you let them go, then you can flow. And so what I would say to anybody who's thinking that, anybody in another country or whatever, it's don't listen to it. You will never quiet those voices. If the voice is inside of you and that's in you and you want to try it, go for it. I mean, Hollywood, the people that I have met here in Hollywood have been some of the most wonderful people. One of the reasons I'm so honored in being here is I look at you and I look at the roster of guests that you've had. Man, ain't no weak people sitting here with you. Everybody that tells their story to you, there are people who are self-starters who did it on their own. Yes, we get help and there's a lot of wonderful people that come into our lives and help us, but there's really no set path. It's not like a lawyer that knows, you got to do your 4 years, then you go here, and a doctor does his practice or whatever. No, it's completely open. And so if you really want it and you're all about it and you work hard, I think the chances of success are there. Because the industry needs people like that. The industry is not going to reject a hard worker. It's not going to reject somebody who's passionate. So yes, come on over. We need people like you.
And I also think that another thing to point out about the pandemic, there's been a lot of really things that have been happening this entire year, 2020. If we could just write this one off and just move on would be great. But at the same time, I'm always trying to find the opportunity in every situation, no matter how bad. And one of the opportunities that's come out of it is we're now recognizing our fault and that we don't have enough people that are able to be a part of telling their stories. And if we're talking about demographics and people that are, this minority or that minority, we're now recognizing, oh boy, we got to do something about this. And if we can find people like you or of other minorities that have different stories and different experiences, we need to bring more of them in there. And yes, it's really uncomfortable to be like, oh boy, we kind of messed this one up. But at least now we have the opportunity to fix it, which is one of the reasons that it's important to me to allow you to tell your story so that somebody else that's listening that might be 15 years before where you are, that hears the voice. Now, I'm from Puerto Rico. We don't do this thing. We don't do the Hollywood thing. I want them to listen to you and say, all right, never mind. Whatever the voice is in the back of my head, I'm going to turn that one off. I'm going to put in earbuds and the new voice is going to be Auggie. right? That's why we're doing this. And there's so many other things that we can talk about as far as your health journey, work-life balance, all those other things. I definitely want to get there. But there's one thing you and I really haven't talked about yet at all, either today or offline. When I look at your IMDb Pro page, it makes no sense. If I look at my page, I used to get this all the time. They would look at it, they'd see the credits, and then all of a sudden burn notice. How did that happen? So with your IMDb Pro page, it's a few little things here and there. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, From Dusk Till Dawn, Heroes Reborn, Hawaii Five-0, like what in the world? So you come out in 2010, talk about the gap between arriving and all of a sudden your resume exploding.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because that's another thing that I think you and I have in common. You know, we've had very storied and varied disciplines in our careers. That just goes to show, you know, what's wonderful is that life. The more I soul search and look at things, life is really like a canvas that we paint, right? And then there are days that we have to focus on the brushstrokes and the lines. But then there are days that it behooves us to step back and look at the canvas and look at, the entire piece and how we're doing. So what you've done just now is you've forced me to step back and kind of look at the canvas, which is, it's great. But as you well know, when people tell their stories, we tend to encapsulate things in the canvas. And so for those people listening out there, those friends that I haven't met yet, but that there might be on the fence about joining the industry or this and that, you have to remember that success is never a straight line. And so I can show you the canvas, but what I should really be talking about is all those, dead ends and bumping my head against a brick wall and, doing things that didn't work out. And between that is the main theme of not quitting, like whatever happens, just get up again, keep going, because things are going to appear. When I got here in 2010, yes, the major goal was to be in Hollywood, to either start doing features or scripted television. Well, it took me a good 4.5 years to do that because, I had a family. First and foremost, I had to provide for them. And, I didn't know anybody in the city, let alone in the industry, in the city. I didn't know anybody. So I had to make a living. And the easiest way or quickest way for me to make a living was, going back to commercials and advertising. So I edited commercials for about those 4.5 years. But what happened was, and again, it's also times of crisis like we're in now, that they just create opportunities and they just put you in a position where you end up fighting a lot harder than you would under normal circumstances if you're in a comfortable position. So what happened to me in advertising was that I started working at an ad agency downtown as one of their in-house editors, and that went pretty well, although that's a recipe for abuse. When we talk about work-life balance, they have you in there, they'll work you to the bone. Like I was doing everything from QuickTime transcodes to actually cutting campaigns, so, it was like super exhausting. After 2 years at that agency, or 3 years, I got offered a job at a really high-profile commercials editorial house in Santa Monica. And I jumped at the chance. I took it. This is going to be great, But what I didn't know, the way a lot of those boutiques work is it's very cutthroat. It's not, I thought I was going to join a team and it's almost like a clearinghouse for editors, and editors are very much commoditized. And, you have your clientele and they have projections of numbers that you have to hit every year. And if you don't hit those numbers, then they don't renew your contract. So what happened to me was that I very naively went into this job without any agency relationships in LA or anything like that. And, long story short, I didn't meet those projections and I was, let go at the end of the year. So all of a sudden I'm unemployed. And that's the moment of crisis where you're like, okay, I have about 3 months here to survive. If I'm going to make a move, it has to be now. And I did. I reached out to, one of the angels on my path. His name is Alfonso Gomez Rejon. He's a wonderful director. And he put me in touch with the people at Dusk Till Dawn. And that's how I did my first job. And what's funny is that, all those years later, I felt like I was back in Puerto Rico trying to learn an Avid, because I went to From Dusk Till Dawn. I didn't get hired. I just said, can I just come in and help out? And again, I adopted that mindset that served me well. I was like, I have this job. They just don't know it yet, but I have it. I'm just going to show up every day at 8:30 and help out. And I have this job. They just don't know it. And lo and behold, it happened. Eventually, I ended up getting hired. And based on that work, I was recommended to my big brother in the industry, like the most influential person, Mr. James Wilcox, ACE.
Totally shameless plug.
Yeah, that's right.
Recent podcast guest. I will put him in the show notes. Continue. James Wilcox blew me away, dude. One of my favorite interviews ever. I can see why he was a guiding light for you. But anyway, I digress. Yeah. Continue.
And I love the episode, by the way. It's fantastic. I listened to it, repeatedly. So, they, Mr. Peter Tassler, who was the post-producer on Hawaii Five-0, called me and he said, I hear good things. And I knew Peter from my Miami days. We had worked at the same post house, but, understandably, he was like, you have no scripted credits. 5-0 is a tough show. I don't know. But after cutting my teeth on From Dusk Till Dawn, I got put in touch. He asked me, would you like to interview? Because James is looking for an assistant for next season. And I got to tell you, he put the fear of God in me. Like, he was like, he's very demanding, he's, you got to be on point and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'll meet him, and right away, it was just like instant connection. I felt very close to him because right away I understood this is a guy who's fair, but he's all about the work and I'm all about the work. So I'm not gonna shortchange him on that. And I'm going to work hard. So I think we're going to get along fine. And lo and behold, we were together almost 6 years.
He's definitely a good person to have on your short list of people that are looking for you when they have their next job come along. So I have a much, much clearer idea now of how to make sense of the IMDb Pro resume. And I love some of the ideas behind it. The one that I love the most, I'm so going to steal this. I have the job, they just don't know it yet. It's funny because I've never put it into such succinct words. That is exactly how I felt when I went after Burn Notice, and it's exactly how I felt when I went after Cobra Kai. I knew they were never going to find somebody that was a better fit. They could look until the end of time. Nobody is going to crush the show the way that I will. You guys just don't know it. So it's my chance to prove it to you. And you're of the same mentality that you just showed up and you just helped until they figured it out themselves. Yeah, and it's funny and please, your listeners out there, please don't misunderstand. It's not an ego thing, because believe me, I'm very much against ego. Anything that has to do with ego usually messes up my life big time. It's almost like a feeling of like, I so want to help out and I so want to be a part of this, that it just feels right. Like I think one of the things that we forget, I was talking to
a young lady who wanted some advice. And I said, about interviewing and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, do your homework and be professional and all that stuff. But, one thing that we all tend to forget, and we shouldn't, don't forget that childlike enthusiasm, that speaks volumes, like being childish is not acceptable, but being childlike is fantastic. And don't be afraid to show that you're excited about something, like we're also, am I going to say the wrong thing? And what? No, man, if you're excited about Cobra Kai, who wouldn't be excited about Cobra Kai, man? It's like fucking Daniel San and, Johnny's back and, that's awesome. I still remember when I saw The Karate Kid multiple times in Puerto Rico, this is why we do this, this is why I left my country. This is why I don't eat rice and beans that often, because I'm in another country, like the chance to even be in the room with these people is fantastic. And why would you hide that,
Yeah, I think it's so easy to fall into the trap of believing I have to be professional. I have to be all kept up. It's very corporate. Like I have to be, it's not that way in this industry at all. And I think the biggest takeaway that's really important to dive into a little bit further before we kind of transition to the next area of the call is you talking about ego. And I think what's really important for people to understand is there's a fine line, but a very important one between arrogance and confidence. Arrogance is, oh yeah, I'm the best candidate. I'm so good at what I do. You'd be stupid to not hire me. Confidence is, I know that nobody can provide the value to you that I can. I know I can make your show better and I want to be a part of this. There's nothing wrong with being confident. That's how you felt. And that's the same way that I felt. It was never, oh my God, I'm so the best fit for Cobra Kai. You guys would be so dumb to hire somebody else. I'm amazing. That's arrogance. Confidence is, I love this show almost as much or as much as you do, and I will do everything I can to create your vision of it. I'm confident that I can do that. People sense that. They feel it. And it's not about, well, I've worked on Abbott and I have this credit and this credit and this credit. Like you said, it's the passion, but it's also the confidence that I can deliver and I can provide you the value, which you've really learned how to succinctly package and make very clear to people.
Yeah, and it's like, I shameless plug of this article that I wrote for Joaquin's website, the Service-Centric Mindset. I think that if, it talks about that, like how do we, because, you go to all these panels and all these industry professionals, they're like, oh, it's so political and you got to read the room. And so that can create a lot of uncertainty on people. Like, how do I act? And I just distilled it to that, man. It's like if you do everything from the point of view of serving your fellow guys and gals on a show, like your fellow crew, like really from the heart. Everything that you do is about pushing the rock up the hill and making the show better. Man, there's very little you can do that's going to be misconstrued, because, when you do that, you anticipate people's needs. You try to make life easier for the showrunners and the producers and all that stuff. And that's ultimately what it's all about. If you as an editor or assistant or PA or whatever, doing your job, you create a sense and a feeling that these people don't have to manage you or don't have to be on you. You are winning, man. You will get hired again. You will get noticed, you will get promoted, because this job is super hard, Just if you're only doing your job description, it's hard enough. And so if on top of that, you're having to, pick up the slack for somebody else, that's not good, So if you kind of take it from that point of view of like, I just want to help, and it also happened to me, like in combating my own anxiety. Like I just had the pleasure of editing some episodes of The Good Lord Bird for Showtime, co-editing them. But one of the things that I got hired on the show, and the first day, they tell me, okay, you're coming in on your first day at 9 a.m. At 12, the director of episode 6 is coming in and you need to do her director's cut. And I'm like, oh, okay. And, and I was freaking out. How am I going to do this? I haven't had time to look at the dailies and da-da-da-da-da. And then that approach really centered me because I said, you know what, dude? This is an extraordinary situation. And at the end of the day, you are here to help. You are the one that's helping them, get out of this like weird situation. So just go in there with a good attitude. Don't be afraid because you are helping. And yeah, that just completely chilled me out. And I went in and, had a wonderful 4 days with that director and she left super happy. But it was that. It was just like when we sat down, I said, we've all been thrown in this frying pan, but I'm here for you. I don't care how long I have to work. Let me know what you need and I will make sure you leave here with the cut that you want. And we were off to the races and, we still call each other on the phone and, it's wonderful.
And again, that goes to the conversation about arrogance versus confidence. Arrogance in that situation is I'm going to pretend that I'm awesome. I'm totally going to hide the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing. I haven't watched anything. I don't know where the footage is. Who is this director? Wait a second. How do I work my desk chair? I just got here 3 hours ago. But no, I have to convey that I'm awesome as opposed to I'm just going to be open about this. Here's the elephant in the room. This is a tough situation. We're all stuck here. Let's figure it out together. I'm here to serve you. It changes the dynamic of the entire relationship. Then when a question comes up, hey, how about this shot? Got to be honest, I don't know where that is. I haven't even opened this bin yet, right? But you can get through those things as long as you are setting those expectations and making it clear, this is the dynamic of the relationship. I want to serve you. I want to help you tell your story. Now let's figure out this BS schedule together. Right? Makes all the difference in the world. And you alluded to the fact that it's certainly no secret that working in this industry is really hard. And it creates a lot of anxiety and it takes a toll on people from the health perspective, causes burnout, causes depression. So I want to rewind back to, I believe it was around 2014 or 2015. I had this crazy, stupid idea. I'm going to try and make editors healthier and do this fitness and post thing. And as I remember, you were one of my very first, you joined an online group. I think it was all of maybe $4.99 or some crazy thing. We're going to get our Fitbits and do whatever. Yeah. And I know that you and I have talked about this before, where this is a problem that I've learned to abate as much as I can, but I have a tendency to become a fire hose of information. Here's everything you have to know and more. And you'd said something very specific to me that I think is going to be a great way to segue this conversation. You said that was the right information at the wrong time.
Right.
What was happening at that time for you? My sincerest apologies for the interruption in the middle of this interview. But if you are a content creator or you work in the entertainment industry, not only is the following promo not an interruption, but listening has the potential to change your life. Because collaborating with Evercast is that powerful. Here's a brief excerpt from a recent interview that I did with Evercast co-founders Brad Thomas and award-winning editor Roger Barton.
Living this lifestyle of a feature film editor has really had an impact on me. So I was really looking for something to push back against all of these lifestyle infringements that are imposed on us, both by schedules and expectations. When you guys demoed Evercast for me that first time, my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, oh my God, this is what I have been waiting for a decade.
I also had the same reaction when I first saw Evercast. 2 words came to mind: game changer.
Our goal, honestly, is to become the Zoom for creatives, whatever it is you're streaming, whether it's editorial, visual effects, Pro Tools for music composition, live shot cameras. It's consistent, audio and video, lip sync, always stays in sync. Whether you're in a live session where you're getting that feedback immediately, or you can't get it immediately, so you record the session and you can share those clips with people on the production team where there's no room for any confusion. It's like, this is exactly what the director wants. This is exactly what the producer wants.
What matters most to me is it makes the entire process more efficient, which then translates to us as creatives who spend way too much time in front of computers. We get to shut it down and we get to go spend time with our friends and family.
The biggest complaint, and I'm sure you guys have heard this many, many times, this looks amazing, I just can't afford it.
Tesla had to release the Model S before they released the Model 3. So by the end of the year, we are going to be releasing a sub $200 version a month of Evercast for the freelancer and indie creatives. Anyone who is a professional video creator outside of Hollywood.
I think what we've learned over the last few months is that this technology can translate to better lives for all of us, that give us more flexibility and control while still maintaining the creativity, the creative momentum, and the quality of work.
I cannot stress this enough. Evercast is changing the way that we collaborate. If you value your craft, your well-being, and spending quality time with the ones you love, Evercast now makes that possible for you and me. To listen to the full interview and learn about the amazing potential that Evercast has to change the way that you work and live, visit optimizeyourself.me/Evercast. Now back to today's interview.
Well, like you said, and I'm gonna just lay it out straight, because I keep it real. Like, listen, I'm here from the health perspective. We're segueing into this. I am here to represent all the health reprobates out there. We tend to, listen to fitness coaches and whatever. And going back to the idea of the canvas, these guys have a pretty finished canvas. These guys are like, they're black belts. They're like on chapter 50 of their novel. I'm here to represent the cats that are like on chapter 1, and then like that kid maybe in Nicaragua who's like, should I take the plunge and go to Hollywood? I'm here to represent those guys who've been overweight, who've abjectly failed at getting fit, and are thinking, should I take that plunge? Should I try again? Yeah, try again. I'm here to say that little by little, you can get a handle on your health. I'm still a long way from being healthy. Like Hugh Jackman and Mark Wahlberg ain't got nothing to worry about. They ain't going to lose the cover of Men's Health to me. They're in no danger of that.
They've also got more than enough money to afford that with an entire team of professionals surrounding them. There's nothing that annoys me more when people look at the celebrity picture. Oh, look at what he was able to do. Do you have any idea what that costs, the amount of time they put into it, and the support that surrounds them? It's insanity.
It's insanity.
I don't remember the exact number. I'm going to quote it wrong. Somebody's going to look it up and say that I got it wrong, and I'm sure I did. But I believe that LeBron James's budget for the year, just for massages and food and like all the recoveries, just things that make him a better person, not even athletic training, is over $1 million a year.
Damn.
Just to take care of himself and recover. We ain't got that kind of money or that kind of time. So we're fighting a completely different battle. What brought you to the group in the first place? Because you said you were chapter 1. And yeah. I was reading from chapter 43.
Yeah, that like I've always struggled with my weight. Like I was a morbidly obese kid, and full disclosure, I was a morbidly obese adult to the point that in the year 2009, and this is something I don't know why I didn't talk about this on the pre-interview, but I was so far gone. Like I'm 5'3". That's how tall I am. I used to walk around with my chest puffed up and collar popped because I thought I was 5'4". I measured myself this week. I'm 5'3". All right. I'm lower than a whisper, So at my heaviest as an adult, I was like an enchilada away from 300 pounds on a 5'3" frame, I got to a point where I was too far gone. And in 2009, I actually had gastric bypass, because I felt that I had let my weight get so out of control that I was too far gone. Like I couldn't really work out. I couldn't really and so, I made that decision. It's funny. And this is a conversation that we could have 3 podcasts about, but knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't have made that decision. But I'm glad I did, because for me, I used it as a tool. It kind of like leveled the playing field and got me back to a point where I could execute again, where I could move without pain, and where I could, exercise and all that stuff. But anyway, in 2014, what brought me to your group was like, I was noticing that after I had the surgery in 2009, and it was 2014. I had already beaten the odds. Like they say, within 2 years, like people gain their weight back. and whatever. I hadn't, but I was starting to notice myself slowly creeping up again. I'm like, no way. So I wanted, to get into a group or something that would help me address my weight, which has been always like my nemesis, and so I joined, and that's exactly what happened. Like, I was just overwhelmed with information, and to the point that it just short-circuited me, But also, at that time, what was happening to me too, it's like I was transitioning into scripted television. And yes, like I had started working on a very tough show. Hawaii Five-0 is incredibly demanding. As you know, you've done those procedurals where there's so many gears to those shows. There's the action, the humor, all the gag. You have to do temp effects, and sound design is crucial. It was just a lot, And so I was already like dealing with all of that on the professional side, and then trying to tame all this information on the personal side. It was just too much. Like one of them had to give. And at that point, I made the choice that the fitness in post had to give for a while. And like everything, very, very predictably, I spent the next almost 6 years working very hard, cultivating a lot of professional success. But I also put on, 40, 50 pounds and, ran headfirst into the titanium thumbtack that is, burnout and depression. And yeah, it's like every decision that you make has a price. And so that was the very heavy price that I paid. But I do want to say, getting back to to being overwhelmed by fitness in post and all that stuff, like at first I was like very turned off. I was like, F this, and this is, too much work and blah, blah, blah. Start to get a handle on my health and taking ownership of my body and my mind. I realize now how wonderful what you were doing was, because when you start to take ownership of your life, it's like finding, I don't know, like what some people would say, I found religion, or I found, like you get this sort of wonderful feeling washing over you, and you can't help but want to share it, and that's where I saw what you were doing. It's like this is somebody that wants to share this great feeling, and how can that be wrong, But here's what I've realized about myself. In the course of trying to get a handle on my health and my fitness and whatever, I tried everything. I tried all types of diets, personal trainers, meal delivery services, all that stuff. About 2 years ago, I can trace it back that I started laying the groundwork for like really getting healthy, I started reading more about nutrition. I started reading, and little by little, not almost like imperceptible steps, almost like if I admitted to myself that I was reading a nutrition book, like it might just vanish and I might just short circuit myself, But little by little, I'm putting, instituting small little changes, that I could keep building, and what I learned was that things I wish I'd known is that this is a process that takes time. This is a process that is far from sexy. There's no like hacks like they promise you, like if you stop eating bananas, you're going to lose weight. No, that's not going to happen. So it's a process that takes time. And every time that I've tried to circumvent the process, I've ended up messing things up and actually gaining more weight and undoing whatever progress I've made, And so once again, you realize that there's, how we have different voices that speak to us. When it comes to weight loss, there's all types of different weight losses. Like let's say, yes, that the Eddies are coming up and you want to fit into that tuxedo and you're 6 weeks out. And so you starve yourself for 6 weeks and you fit into that tuxedo. That's weight loss. You lost weight, but is it sustainable? No, it's not. It's like you're building a house of cards. It'll sit there for when you need it to present it. But the minute even a small breeze blows, that house of cards is coming down. So the biggest lesson that I've learned in the past 2 years is that small changes equals sustainability, and sustainability equals consistency. And that consistency takes you little by little towards success, and that's where I've been really enjoying myself, and when the pandemic happened, I saw it, man. I had a vision of the future where I put on 70 pounds, and came out like suicidal. And I'm like, that's not going to happen to me. If the world is going on pause, the only thing that I'm going to promise myself is I'm going to try and come out better than I went in. And that's what I've been doing, because I've realized too that, when you think about exercise and, we think of Rocky, and the montage. I'm not Rocky. You know who I am? I'm Clover Lang. I'm Mr. T in Rocky 3. Like, oddly enough, I realized that I respond better to training myself, to taking time, an hour and a half for myself in the garage, with very limited equipment, but that's my time. One of the things too, like in listening to my silence, is that I realized that the reason I don't respond to trainers or a lot of leaderboards or stuff like that is because I realized that because of my upbringing, and I have no problem talking about this, but I realized that I am an adult child of an alcoholic. And what happens to a lot of us who grow up with alcoholics is that we become codependent, take on this role where we don't want to cause problems, rock the boat. We're always managing the alcoholic. And so you get into these patterns where everything you do is not for you, it's for other people. And so you start putting the success is based on external circumstances, like a trainer telling you that you're doing good, a teacher praising you, a parent giving you the attention that they don't normally give you. And so for me, that became a way of life, and I've had to really step back, because what happens to codependents and children of alcoholics and addicts is we repeat the patterns, if we don't even know what's happening to us, we repeat these patterns. We repeat them in our working relationships. We repeat them in our social relationships, in our romantic, loving relationships. And that was one of the things where it sounded so counterintuitive to me. Like, you've always been like a fitness reprobate. How are you going to train yourself? And I got to tell you, man, I've had the most success training myself and doing my thing with myself, because once I was able to identify my codependency, I understood where a lot of those behaviors came from. And it was like an armed revolution started inside of me. And it started with the fact that for the first time, and I know that this sounds kind of kumbaya-ish or whatever, but I don't care. For the first time, once I was able to recognize my codependency, for the first time, I actually liked myself. I actually understood where I stood and why I did the things that I did, and was able to, like, without any blame, I'm not here to blame my parents, or no, they were great people, and like every person, they had their shortcomings, and that's cool. You recognize that, you give it a name, you let it pass through you, but then it's up to you to get up and do that. You don't keep sending them the bill for that, like you pay your own bill, and so for the first time, I really liked myself. And I saw this phrase. I don't know who said it, but it was so consonant with what was happening to me. I saw it on Instagram. It said, loving yourself. That's where the revolution starts. And I'm like, yes, I'm in. I'm going to grab my AK and go into the hills,
That's a very different revolution, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, I grabbed my jump ropes and, my resistance bands and, have been doing my thing. And then from you, I learned that there are some things that you can actually, there's some actual very useful gadgets that will help you on your journey. Like for me, things I cannot live without, to anybody that's out there going like, I might want to try this, I cannot live without my jump ropes, and I'm not affiliated with them, but they're amazing. It's a company called Crossrope. They make the most amazing jump ropes. They're like the Teslas of jump ropes. I actually gave James a set for his birthday, and he would call me from New York with the pandemic and be like, dude, you're a prophet. These jump ropes are saving my life, So I cannot live without my jump ropes. I actually bought, and it's not cheap, but I've gotten a lot of use out of it, is a gorilla bow with the resistance bands. Fantastic. And then the third thing that helps me out, especially because I'm training myself, and it's that age-old question, how do you know you are working hard enough? It's a heart rate monitor, and, get the one that goes around your chest. Don't get those wristwatches, because I can't see, man. And especially at 4:30, 5 in the morning when I'm, my vision is super blurry, so I can't see the watch. But the chest one, you put on your phone and Bluetooth, and it gives you a big reading. And so you figure out your fat burning zone and whatever, and you see that number displaying there, and what kind of level you have to maintain. And so, little by little, I just been, it's become a part of me now. Like now it's not like, I got to work out. And that's how I started. It's like, I got to work out. Now it's more like I have to stop myself. There are days that I wake up and I'm feeling run down. And I know myself. I know that I am very susceptible to compulsive behavior sometimes. And exercise can also become a compulsion. I feel great. And the greatest thing that you've talked about, forever, and I'm feeling it now, is that your mind clears. When you start taking care of your body, your mind becomes clearer. And I can see things from different perspective now that before, when I was full of junk food and no sleep and whatever, your body goes. But the first thing that goes is your mind.
Well, there's at least 1.5 million things. So many threads I could pull. Each of them could become their own episode. Just the heart rate monitor alone, I could dedicate an entire episode to talking about heart rate straps, heart rate variability, apps to get, how to connect them to your training, fat burning zones. That could be one episode. There's about 14 episodes in the last 10 minutes that I could dive into. But there's one place that I think is the most important takeaway for anybody listening that you've already hit home, and I just want to emphasize it again. It was this idea of small incremental changes. And one of the I don't even know if I just made up the saying now or if there's something I read and I don't realize it, but there's a huge difference between getting fit and getting healthy. You are trying to get fit. You're trying to and when you said, well, they say you can lose weight by not eating bananas anymore. Yeah, you can. You can lose weight by not eating any food at all and sweating all day. Like there's so many ways to lose weight and
Right.
you're going to get fit, right?
Yeah, smoke meth.
Yeah, smoke meth and you're going to get fit real fast. And I think that the problem is that fitness programs, diet programs, those things are a multi-billion-dollar industry because they promise quick results.
Yes.
Long-term, sensible lifestyle change does not make billions of dollars. But that's what it takes to get healthy. And what you did was and I discovered the same thing. When I started Fitness in Post, it was more about fitness. And I realized this is a much longer game than I thought it was because I continued to fail as well. And it really wasn't until about 3 years ago that I, for myself, cracked the consistency code. And when people assume consistency and discipline, and this guy's training Ninja Warrior, he must be exercising 6 days a week. You know what I did this morning during my exercise time? I laid on my yoga mat and I stared at the ceiling for 45 minutes because I'm spent for the week. I know I don't have another workout in me, but I listen to my body because I can always do another workout tomorrow because there is no 90-day finish line. The finish line is the only finish line that's coming, and I'm going to make sure that I'm as far away from that one as possible. And you also figured out it's all about consistency and these small little tiny steps. And there's a phrase, I don't know if you came up with it or I know that you wrote about it, this concept of killing your clone.
Oh, I love that.
I would love to close with this idea of killing your clone.
Oh my God, man. I love that. I actually heard that from Ethan Suplee on his podcast. Like, I'll plug it too. It's a wonderful podcast called American Glutton. And again, it's for us that are, trying to get healthy and are, regular people, check it out. It's fantastic. He had this gentleman on called Tom Kyer. And Tom Kyer, he's a subject matter expert on edged weapons, on Sayok Kali, which is something that you and I need to geek out about because I know you're into martial arts and so am I. Because every time I would have like a shortcoming in my life, I would go and pick up a martial art. So you would think that I'd be part of Project Treadstone because I know, I've taken so many, styles. No, but these guys train in knife fighting, basically, in Sayok Kali. And as part of their mindset training, he has this thing where that he calls killing your clone, which speaks to the heart of these like small incremental changes. He says, imagine that every night at midnight, you will meet an exact clone of yourself as you were 24 hours ago. That clone is you 24 hours ago. And without any further ado, that clone will attack you and you will fight him to the death. You'll have to fight him to the death. If in the last 24 hours, you've done even one small thing to be better than you were 24 hours ago, you will be victorious. So the question he posits to everyone every day is like, what have you done to kill your clone today? And I think that's awesome. I loved it. So I wrote about it because it speaks to the heart of that. You don't have to move a mountain to feel triumphant, just read that article, write that poem you've been on the fence about writing, do those extra 5 reps, take up a music instrument, whatever, learn how to sculpt. Those are all things that I've been doing in the pandemic. Those things make you better. They feed who you are and they inform the work. Like I used to be all about editing and like I buy editing books and that has its place. But you also have to feed the artist in you, man. You also have to feed the heart and the gut engine that's going to inform the work.
And I think it's such a big mistake that people make as creatives, especially those of us that spend so much time in front of a computer. The only way that I'm growing as an editor is learning about Avid and learning about Premiere and watching movies and practicing my craft in the timeline. All of those are great. But the fact that I practice ninja training is making me a better editor and a better creative professional because I learn how to solve complex problems. It enhances my creativity. It gives me more energy. It gives me so much more focus. But we think they're mutually exclusive. Well, I'm not really allowed to exercise in the morning because that's taking away from my time in front of the computer. the exercise is making you better and more effective at your computer. So this idea that they're mutually exclusive, you want to talk about killing something? I want to kill this idea because I'm over it. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can focus on work-life balance and have that be why we are successful, not despite the fact that we are prioritizing these things. Like I want to beat that drum until my dying day, is that the work-life balance is you getting better as an editor or a composer or a designer or whatever your craft is. Those things are making you better at your job.
Yeah. And you know, I've paid a heavy price for ignoring that, you know, and it's cost me dearly. Like here's another thing that's really important for me to make clear, you know, because again, you know, like when we talk about the whole, we tend to get caught up in the finished canvas. It's like, I have made so many mistakes, and I have, because of my behavior for not having a good handle on my health, I have made other people suffer. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's so, I can't say it any more succinctly than that, you know, because when we don't take care of the work-life balance, when we don't take care of ourselves, we start suffering inside, and then the fear kicks in, and the easiest way to deal with fear is to just throw it at somebody else. You know, you're suffering, you throw it at somebody else rather than doing the work, rather than looking inside of yourself. You know, it's easier and more comfortable to be like, well, so-and-so like gets on my nerves, and you're this and you're that, and you're making me feel this way. And, you know, and I've made so many mistakes, and I've made so many people suffer. And that's one of the reasons why I've really taken this journey seriously, because I feel like I have a lot to make up for. You know, I am by far not a perfect soul, and I want to be better. You know, I do, and this is why I'm on it. You know, beyond looking better or beyond fitting into a pair of jeans or whatever. I just, you know, we've all been given a certain amount of grace. And so it falls to us to not let that go to waste. You know, we need to like really actively find what our purpose is and go crush it, because that grace has been bestowed upon us, and it cannot go to waste. And I've wasted it for too many years.
I can't imagine a better place to leave us off. I have a feeling that there may be an ellipses and a to be continued somewhere in here, because I think you and I have a lot more to talk about at some point. But at least for today, I will be respectful of your time. And I think this is certainly a great start. I honestly had no idea when we jumped on this call today that our story went all the way back to EditFest 2010. But I love the fact that that's one of the conversations you had when you first got out here. It gave you just the little tiniest bit of inspiration to get started, keep going. Then all of a sudden our paths crossed again in the Fitness to Post group. And now here you are over a decade later. So man, this has been quite the journey and one hell of an interview. And I'm really glad that we reconnected. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more to come soon. So if people want to find you, they want to connect with you, they want to learn more about you, they want to build a relationship, how can people find you?
Well, I have a Facebook page that I check like once a day, because I'm very leery about consuming too much social media. Mm-hmm. But you know, I'm there, Agustin Rexach. You can find me on Facebook. Please friend me or send me a messenger. I might take a little bit, because like I said, I turn off notifications, and I actively don't engage with it so much, you know. I'm also on Instagram in Post Papi in LA, all one word. And I think I gave you those links. So
we'll make sure to include both of them in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, I would love to hear from people. And, you know, like I'm involved in the community. I'm involved with the Latin Steering Committee at the Guild. I'm involved with Joaquin. I'm a guest contributor to his Hollywood editing mentor, and anything that I can do, man. I'm all about that. Love hearing from people, and I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. Thank you for letting me, tell my story. And you are, an inspiration, man. Like, I look at you and like you found a purpose. So what I was talking about before, you found your purpose, and you got that pit bull bite on it, and that's wonderful. That's the best you can ever hope for. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate all of that, but honestly, the honor is mine, and I thank you for taking the time today. So it's been absolutely great having you here.
Thank you.
Before closing up today's show, I would love to ask for just a couple additional minutes of your time and attention to introduce you to one of my new favorite products created by my good friend Kit Perkins, who you may recognize as creator of the Topomat. Here is a brief excerpt from a recent interview that I did with Ergo-Driven co-founder and CEO Kit Perkins, talking about his latest product, New Standard Whole Protein.
I'm into health and fitness generally, but I want it to be simple and straightforward. About a year and a half ago, I started adding collagen into my protein shakes. And man, the benefits were like more dramatic than any supplement I've ever seen. So I thought, if I could just get this down to coming out of one jar, and it's ingredients that I know I can trust, and you just put it in water and you don't have to think about it.
When people think of protein powders, they think, well, I don't want to get big and bulky, and that's not what this is about. To me, this is about repair.
So a big part of what we're talking about here is you are what you eat. Your body's constantly repairing and rebuilding, and the only stuff it can use to repair and rebuild is what you've been eating. Unfortunately, as the years have gone by, every day getting out of bed, it's like, 2 or 3 creaks and pops in the first couple steps, and that I thought you just sort of live with now. But yeah, once starting the collagen daily or near daily, it's just gone. So for us, job 1A here was make sure it's high quality, and that's grass-fed, 100% pasture-raised cows. And then the second thing, if you're actually going to do it every day, it needs to be simple, it needs to taste good.
Well, my goal is that for anybody that is a creative professional like myself that's stuck in front of a computer, number one, they're doing it standing on a Topomat. Number two, they've got a glass of New Standard protein next to them so they can just fuel their body, fuel their brain. So you and I, my friend, one edit station at a time are going to change the world.
And even better for your listeners, with code OPTIMIZE, on either a one-time purchase or that first subscribe and save order, 50% off. So if you do that subscribe and save, that's 20% off and 50% off with code OPTIMIZE. That's a fantastic deal.
If you're looking for a simple and affordable way to stay energetic, focused, and alleviate the chronic aches and pains that come from living at your computer, I recommend New Standard Whole Protein because it's sourced from high-quality ingredients that I trust and it tastes great. To place your first order, visit optimizeyourself.me/newstandard and use the code OPTIMIZE for 50% off your first order. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Optimize Yourself podcast. To access the show notes for this and all previous episodes, as well as to subscribe so you don't miss future interviews just like this one, please visit optimizeyourself.me/podcast. And don't forget that if you are inspired to take your networking game to a whole new level, but your outreach email game is just a bit weak, you get 100% free access to my new, improved, and upgraded Insider's Guide to Writing Amazing Outreach Emails, which is available for free to download at optimizeyourself.me/email guide. And lastly, a special thanks to our sponsors, Evercast and Ergo-Driven, for making today's interview possible. To learn more about how to collaborate remotely without missing a frame and get your real-time demo of Evercast in action, visit optimizeyourself.me/Evercast. And to learn more about Ergo-Driven and their brand new product that I am super excited about, New Standard Whole Protein, visit optimizeyourself.me/newstandard. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, healthy, and sane, and be well.